Welcome.
Yeah, what's up? You hear me?
What's up? What's up? Everyone has been impatiently waiting, and now they were about to go to sleep. A lot of people just left, David, but it's very late right now in India and Pakistan, approximately 1:30, if I'm not mistaken. In India, AM, but they were patiently waiting. Right now, we have 4,600 people waiting just for you, my friend.
Oh wow. Yeah, I
So,
just I just woke up.
oh, see, I told them that David is in a different time zone and he will join us. But yeah, at the end of the day, they were all waiting for you, and we went up to 5,500 viewers. But like after 12:31 ish, they started to move out, and we still have 4,500 people live watching, and they are anxiously waiting for you to describe to us a little bit about certain things. But before that, I welcome you on my channel, and what would you like to say before we start?
That's up to you guys. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, you have a doctorate degree in philosophy.
hmm
So we would actually try to learn from you the psychology of Muhammad. This was the stream all about. We have debated with over maybe 10 different Islamic people already so far, how he lived his life and why he was such a tyrant
hmm
and wanting the power and abusing women. So from his life, early childhood, how he grew up and all. So what do you think? What do you have to add? I'm gonna give you the mic and just let me know wherever you would like to go, and we will
hmm
go forward, and then we will open the stream for viewers to ask questions.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the most interesting topics that people could discuss about Muhammad. One of the reasons is mainly because people don't know about this stuff. People don't know about Muhammad's childhood, and people don't know how that connects to uh, his psychology and what he imprinted on his community. And this came about kind of by accident. My friend Anthony Rogers read a book by the American psychologist Paul Vitz, who's world class psychologist, and Paul Vitz was actually responding to atheists. I don't know if you guys have the same things in different parts of the world, but in the U.S. and in the U.K., there's this group that were called the New Atheists, and they were more aggressive, and they generally seemed angrier and more hot. Because I was an atheist way back in the '90s, and back in the 1990s, the attitude of pretty much every atheist I knew was, okay, we believe you religious people are wrong and dumb, but we don't really care what you believe. Just, don't kill us over anything. And that was fine. And then later, a group called the New Atheists came out, and they were more like, we have to stop religion or it will destroy us all. And they were really, really hostile towards Christianity and so on. But the attitude of the atheists was, I don't mean all atheists, I mean this more aggressive type of atheist
Yes, we have
was
both of them. Just to add a bit of a sentence over here, we have a lot of atheist agnostic over here watching you as well,
okay.
and
Yeah.
there are good atheists as well, and we know a few channels who are just like this new atheist that you are proclaiming, that they are very, very aggressive towards everyone other than what their own belief system is.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's kind of interesting when an atheist comes from an Islamic background and, hey, I have to get away from Islam, and then they become atheists, but they still have a very similar mentality. Namely, I have to crush everyone who disagrees with me, and no one's allowed to disagree with me, and no one's allowed to think differently, and so on. Um, but so yeah, the attitude of of certain atheists change. And as you pointed out, there are people like the apostate prophet who, he exposes the teachings of the religion that calls for his execution. But other than that, he doesn't feel like he needs to, which makes sense, right? I mean, if you're a Christian or you're a Muslim, you believe these are matters of eternal significance. So it matters what everyone thinks. If you're an atheist, why do you care that a whole lot what people think. And the only real basis for thinking that you really need to care what everyone thinks is that if you believe that, you know, Christians are going to destroy you or something like that, and they're coming to establish a theocracy over you or something like that, and then you get really worried. And that's why the new atheists were really, they were hyped up by certain people like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris. And so, if we don't stop this religion, they're gonna destroy us all. And that got them more aggressive and so on. Anyway, Paul Vitt's psychologist, and he wrote a book because it was very popular among atheists to say that Christians just have daddy issues, right? Meaning we can't function in the world without thinking that we have a daddy watching over us, right? And so the idea is that when you're a baby, you have this father figure who protects you and so on. And, you know, you get older and eventually, hopefully you grow out of that and become an independent person. And the attitude of atheists was Christians just never grow out of this. And so we can't go around without, you know, our father, or our daddy and so on. And so that the claim is that the real reason Christians believe in God is that psychologically they can't function without a daddy. And so what Paul Vitz did was he showed it's actually atheists who have a problem here, because he went through the past few centuries, a couple of centuries, of the most prominent defenders of theism, mainly Christianity, and the most prominent defenders of atheism. And he went in, and then he examined their early lives. And what he found is that with the exception of Kierkegaard, every major Christian figure who's defending theism had a good, stable relationship with a father figure, whether it's the real father or, you know, someone took them in or something like that. But they had a good, healthy relationship with a father figure when they're young. Then he went to the most prominent defenders of atheism over the past couple of centuries, and he found that all across the board, they all had either their fathers left them when they were very young, or they had massively abusive, dysfunctional relationships with a father figure. So they're all either abandoned or their father figures were abusive. And so all he's pointing out there is, hey, you atheists are saying Christians just believe because of this. That would flip back on you, because I could say the reason you don't believe in God is because you had a messed up relationship with a father figure and you despise the idea of having a father, and therefore you don't want your heavenly father. And so
Okay, I will I will have to intervene here because I would like to translate a little bit and summarize for the people, because you are speaking very fast for a
Oh,
lot
sorry.
of
If
audience.
you want me to pause like every 30 seconds or a minute or so, that's fine too.
No, it's just if you could speak a little slower, because most of my audience is Indian and Pakistani, and they English is their second language.
Mhm.
So if we can speak slow, that will be better. But let me summarize that in Hindi and Urdu for everyone, so that they would follow you as well. So इन शॉर्ट में ये बताने चाहते हैं कि एक तो आपके नॉर्मल एथियस हैं जो कि मुनासिब अच्छे एथियस हैं, सब कुछ ठीक है, कोई मसला नहीं है, और हमारे पास बहुत सारे हैं, हमारे पास एथियस एग्नोस्टिक बहुत सारे हैं, साहिल भाई हैं, गालिब भाई हैं, बहुत सारे लोग हैं, और ये सब अच्छे लोग हैं। लेकिन एक और ट्रेंड निकला हुआ है खास किस्म के एथियस का, जो आप लोग भी जानते हैं, कुछ चैनल्स हैं, मैं उनके नाम नहीं लूंगा, जो कहते हैं या तो ये या कुछ नहीं। वो हर किसी के खिलाफ बोलते हैं, वो हिंदुओं के खिलाफ भी बोलते हैं, वो क्रिश्चियनों के खिलाफ भी बोलते हैं, वो हर किसी के खिलाफ बोलते हैं। वो उनको न्यू एथियस का नाम दिया गया। ठीक है, और वो वाले जो न्यू एथियस हैं, वो एक ऐसी चीज है कि वो ज्यादातर वो लोग हैं जो मुसलमान थे पहले और अब एक्स मुस्लिम हुए हैं, लेकिन वो एथियसिज्म के अंदर भी उन्होंने इस्लाम को डाल दिया हुआ। ठीक है, तो ये वो वाले मुसलमान है कि उनकी कट्टरता जो है खत्म नहीं हुई, हालांकि वो मुसलमान नहीं है, अब एथियस कहलाते हैं, लेकिन वो मुसलमान नहीं है। उनकी एक किताब के बारे में बात हो रही है कि उनके बारे में एक किताब लिखी थी एक बंदे ने, और वहां पे उसने दिखाया था कि ये जो नए वाले एथियस निकले, न्यू एथियस जो निकले हैं, जो कि एक्स मुस्लिम है बेसिकली ज्यादातर, वो कह रहे थे कि जो क्रिश्चियन है वो एक खुदा को जो बाप बना के बैठे हुए हैं, इस वजह से जो है ना बाप की बड़ी जरूरत है। वर्सेस अगर देखा जाता है, फिर उसके ऊपर जब रिसर्च किया था तो पता लगा था कि इन एथियस जो लोग हैं, इनके अपने डैडी इश्यूज बहुत ज्यादा थे। अच्छा, जो डैडी इशू बहुत ज्यादा थे ना, ये असल में अब जोड़ेंगे हम कि इस किताब की वजह से ना मोहम्मद के डैडी इशू को हमने लेके आना है इसने, और उसने जोड़ना है उसके साथ। तो ये इस वजह से ये सारी बैकग्राउंड वो बता रहा है, क्योंकि हम एक जेनेरिकली फिलोसॉफिकली इसके ऊपर बात रखने लगे हैं, तो वो सारी इस किताब की इसने हिस्ट्री और बैकग्राउंड बताई है आप सबको। तो मैंने कहा जिन लोगों को समझ नहीं आई वो जरा समझ जाएं कि वो किसके बारे में बात कर रहा है, किस खास पर्टिकुलर लोगों के बारे में बात कर रहा है। डेविड, प्लीज कंटिन्यू सर।
सॉरी 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 सॉरी, लाला जी ये इंग्लिश में बातें होंगी क्या डेविड भाई से फिर?
Yes, because David doesn't know
जी।
Hindi or Urdu, so we will talk in Hindi, in English, and after some time I will summarize. Sorry, I mean let me. I will.
ओके,
Sorry. So मैं बात डेविड के साथ इंग्लिश में करके थोड़ी थोड़ी देर बाद मैं समरी प्रेजेंट कर दूंगा, ताकि सब लोगों को समरी मिल जाए।
तो फिर
डेविड
वही
प्लीज
लाला जी मैं कह रहा था कि हम लोग तो मैं चलता हूँ फिलहाल, ताकि डिस्टर्ब ना होने पाए ना।
ऑल राइट, थैंक यू ब्रदर।
कोई काम नहीं। ओके, थैंक यू, टेक केयर।
All right, so I'll talk a little bit slower, and I'll try to pause after points. So Paul Vitz, psychologist, he assembled the data, and he showed that what the evidence actually shows is that when someone has a relationship with a father figure who's abusive or has no father figure when he's young, gets abandoned, or the father dies, that it tends to produce certain features in the person's psychology when that person is older. And specifically, three main characteristics. One, the person develops a problem with father figures, and especially with viewing God as any sort of heavenly father. Two, the person tends to rebel against authority and tradition, so doesn't like to get along with traditions and has a problem with authority in general. And three, has a difficulty forming normal relationships later in life. And I just want to be clear, this isn't saying that, if you had a bad father figure, you're going to be this way when you grow up. Or if you had a great father figure, you're going to be this way when you grow up. These are just shifts that happen. In other words, you notice higher percentages of certain things based on childhood experiences. And so that's what the evidence shows, that people who have those kinds of experiences when they're young tend to have higher percentages of certain problems when they get older. So we'll go, if you wanted to translate
Yes.
that, and then we could talk about how this relates to Islam.
So अब जो पॉल ने, जो कि फिलोसोफर था जिसने किताब लिखी थी, उसने हमें बताया कि उसने सारे ट्रेंड जो हैं इकट्ठे किए थे, और उसने हमें बताया कि जरूरी नहीं है कि हर वो शख्स जिसको अपने बाप की बापता नहीं मिली हो बचपन में, वो हमेशा ही ऐसा ही होगा। लेकिन ट्रेंड ये कहता है, ज्यादातर ऐसा ही होता है कि अगर उसको बचपन में बाप के साथ मसले मसाइल हुए हों, और उसने इसको प्रूफ किया था डेटा के साथ, लोगों के डेटा के साथ, और उसने इसको प्रूव करके दिखाया था अपनी ही किताब के अंदर, कि ज्यादा ट्रेंड इसका यही बनता है कि इस तरीके होने की वजह से वो जो बंदा जब बड़ा होकर के निकलता है तो उसको ये वाले इश्यूज आते हैं, और इसको जो है ना अब वो कनेक्ट करेगा मोहम्मद के साथ। तो ये वो किताब थी, ये बैकग्राउंड था, जो कि असल में ये जो नए तरह के एक जो स्क्वाड है, आप लोगों को मालूम है, और बहुत सारे लोगों ने नाम उस स्क्वाड का दे दिया है, न्यू टाइप के एथियस्ट, जो कि इस्लाम में अभी तक हैं, हालांकि इस्लाम छोड़ चुके हैं। उसके अगेंस्ट जो किताब लिखी गई थी, उसको जब उन्होंने देखना शुरू किया तो वो मोहम्मद उस पर फिट बैठ रहा है 100%। ब्रदर डेविड।
So that's just what the psychology shows. That's what the evidence shows, that having these sorts of problems when you're young tends to produce certain problems when you're older. So in that book, Paul Vitz was talking about theism and atheism. He wasn't talking about Islam. But in the very end of the book, there's a section responding to possible objections to what he's pointing out. And the most obvious possible objection to this, in other words, if people with fathers who abandoned them or were abusive towards them, if they tend to become atheists, why haven't there been more atheists down through history? In other words, there have always been bad or absent fathers. So why weren't there more atheists down through history? And so Paul Vitz responds to this one, and he says, for most of history, atheism wasn't even an option, right? You might be able to pick, different gods to believe in, but atheism is just not an option until very recently in history, a serious option for people. So what he says is that in the past, so before you have atheism as an option, the psychology would have expressed itself in different ways. So you wouldn't have people becoming atheists, but you would have people who object to God in different ways. So they couldn't deny the existence of some sort of God, but he says they would have problems viewing God as a heavenly father, right? They could view God as a cosmic slave master or something like that, but not as a heavenly father. He says that they would have rebelled against authority and tradition, and that they'd have problems forming normal, healthy relationships. But even though they're not atheists, they're still going to have a problem with belief in God in other ways. And so what's interesting about that is, if you look at the life of Muhammad lost every relationship he had with a father figure and a mother figure. But he lost every relationship he had with a father figure up until he was eight years old. So he was born, his father had already died. His mom sends him to live with a family of Bedouins. They conclude, according to Islamic sources, that he was demon possessed when he was 4. So they send him back to his mom. Then his mom dies. Then he's sent to live with his grandfather. His grandfather dies. So every close relationship he has for the first 8 years of his life ends in death or abandonment. And we should be looking for certain features later in life that happen to be exactly what we find. So if you want to,
Okay. Yes. So here is the thing. अभी जो ये सारी बात बताई उसमें ये है कि वो जो पॉल विट्स है जिसने अपनी किताब लिखी थी, उसमें जो उसने आखिरी के 2 चैप्टर लिखे थे, उसके अंदर उसने थोड़ा सा इस चीज को भी एक्सप्लेन किया था कि एक वक्त पुराना ऐसा था जहां पे एथिसिज्म जो था वो इतना फेमस नहीं था, तो लोग एथिस्ट नहीं बनते थे, लेकिन वो उस टाइप के दीन को, रिलीजन को छोड़ देते थे और नहीं एक्सेप्ट करते थे जहां पे कोई फादर फिगर नुमा चीज हो। वो किसी और को एक्सेप्ट कर लेते थे, किसी और दीन को, किसी और धर्म को एक्सेप्ट कर लेते थे, ठीक है, लेकिन वो किसी फादरली फिगर टाइप के रिलीजन को एक्सेप्ट करने से दूर भागते थे। अब यहाँ पे जैसे ही हम इस्लाम में अगर इस चीज को डालें, हालांकि किताब इस्लाम के ऊपर नहीं लिखी गई थी, लेकिन जब हमें इस्लाम में आके देखते हैं तो हमें मोहम्मद इसके ऊपर फिट बैठता हुआ दिखता है। तो इस किताब की वजह से असल में मोहम्मद जो है उसको जब इस चीज के अंदर फिट करते हैं, देखते हैं, तो वो 100% फिट बैठता है। कि अगर आप देखें तो कुरान के अंदर 100% लिखा हुआ है कि अल्लाह कभी किसी का बाप नहीं हो सकता। क्यों? क्योंकि अगर आप देखो कि मोहम्मद बचपन में हर किस्म के फादर टाइप बंदे से उससे दूर होता गया और अपनी बल्कि माँ से भी दूर होता गया। उसका हर किस्म का रिश्ता जो है वो खत्म होता गया, उसको लाइफ में मिला ही नहीं। इवन सो एंड सो कि उसको बचपन में ही डीमन पोजेस्ड, यानी कि वो, हाँ आप लोगों को पता डीमन पोजेस्ड किसे कहते हैं, माना गया था। और आपने अभी मैंने बताया भी था कि उसकी माँ ने उसको दे दिया था, दूध भी नहीं उसे पिलाया था, चचाओं ने भी उसके साथ बुरा किया और आहिस्ता आहिस्ता सब लोग उससे दूर होते गए। ये चीज जब इसी किताब की इस चीज को हम मोहम्मद के ऊपर फिट करने की कोशिश करते हैं तो वो 100% फिट बैठता है। डेविड, यू हैव अ नाइस कॉफी मग बाय द वे।
Oh yeah, I like it. Anand here asks, what's the name of that book? The name of the book is Faith of the Fatherless by Paul Vitz. So Faith of the Fatherless. And so we know what to expect from someone with Muhammad's childhood experiences. He's going to, according to the theory, he's going to have a problem with father figures, especially with viewing God as a heavenly father. He's going to rebel against authority and tradition, and he's going to have difficulty forming normal, healthy, stable relationships. And what's amazing is you look at Muhammad, and I mean, it's not just that we see these things, it's that we see them in an extreme form. So Muhammad believes in Allah, but according to the Quran, as you know, Adam, Muhammad is a cosmic slave master, right? The Quran says that no one approaches him as anything other than as a slave. Correct. And the saying that God is your heavenly father is the worst thing that you can do. in
Shirk.
Islam. Yeah, and so you even have these claims like if they say God has a son, the universe is going to shake itself apart simply by saying that. So it's not just that he has a problem with viewing God as a heavenly father. He's like the extreme example of it, right? Like it's the worst thing you can possibly do. Or God, there being an eternal father-son relationship within the divine nature is like the ultimate horrible thing anyone could ever say. And so that gets a check mark there. But then as far as rebelling against authority and tradition, notice, I mean, Muhammad raises an army against his own people and conquers and subjugates them. So he rebels against their religious traditions. He rebels against their authority. He eventually leaves, comes back, and conquers them. So in other words, he rebels against authority and tradition as much as you possibly can. And then as far as relationships, I mean, think about how.
Wait, before you go to relationship, let me just translate this. This is very
Oh.
important. So, अब अगर हम मोहम्मद की लाइफ को देखते हैं, तो जैसा कि कुरान में लिखा हुआ है कि आप अल्लाह तो कभी किसी का बाप हो ही नहीं सकता ना. मोहम्मद जो है वो खुद सब लोगों का सिर्फ और सिर्फ मास्टर बना. वो भी किसी का बाप नहीं है. माँ काना मोहम्मदन आबाहुम, ठीक है, ये भी कुरान के अंदर लिखा हुआ है. तो बेसिकली अगर आप देखोगे कुरान की और मोहम्मद की टीचिंग के अंदर, उसने फादरली रिलेशनशिप अपने साथ या अपने अल्लाह के साथ हर किस्म का खत्म कर दिया. क्यों? क्योंकि बचपन से उसको इस चीज की नेगेशन मिली. सो एंड सो कि अगर आप कुरान में देखते हैं कि वो कहते हैं कि अगर अल्लाह के साथ उसका कोई बेटा शरीक ठहराओगे तो पूरी की पूरी धरती कायनात कांप जाएगी. ठीक है, ये लेवल हो गया था मोहम्मद का कि वो हर किस्म के रिश्ते से भाग रहा था. और फिर ये देखो कि इवेंचुअली उसने, जब उसमें ताकत आई, जैसा कि हम आज बात कर रहे थे, उसने अपने ही लोगों के ऊपर अटैक किया. जो उसके अपने ही लोग थे, और आपके पास डिफरेंट जगहों पे आता है कि लोग कह रहे थे ये तो हमारे अपने ही दोस्त, भाई बहने और चचा वगैरह हैं, हम इनके ऊपर ही हमला कर दें. नहीं, मोहम्मद ने कहा कोई मसला नहीं है, तुम अल्लाह की वजह से इनके ऊपर हमला करो. मोहम्मद ने इवेंचुअली अपने ही लोगों के ऊपर, मक्का के ऊपर इवेंचुअली हमला किया. ये मोहम्मद की इवेंचुअल हकीकत थी. क्यों? क्योंकि वो हमेशा से इन डैडी फिगर से भागता रहा था. तो यहां तक है. अब वो देन अब आगे चल रहा है. डेविड उसकी वाइफ्स के ऊपर आएगा. यस डेविड.
And so then there's the problem forming normal relationships. And think about Muhammad, right? I mean, he tells his best friend, hey, give me your 6-year-old daughter. And Abu Bakr says, no, what are you talking about? We're brothers. He says, give me your daughter. He has an adopted son before he's a Muslim, but then eventually takes his adopted son's wife after causing the divorce by lusting after her. He's got various wives that were taken, as captives, but then he married them. And so this is all, I mean, these are massively dysfunctional relationships, right? Telling your best friend to give over your daughter, taking the wife of your own adopted son. I mean, that is really, really weird, creepy stuff. And so everything that Paul Witt says will happen because of these childhood experiences, it's exactly what we find. But Muhammad doesn't just have father issues, because of abandonment and whatever as a child. He also has mother issues because his mother died very young. So the only two mother figures he had, the Bedouin family and his real mother, one abandoned him and the other died. So he also has issues. And what this is going to connect to is controlling women, right? You can even see this in little children. Like some are like really clingy. The idea that their mother might walk out of the room or something like this, they freak out. And so what this will tend to produce is a desire to control women. And what do you find in Islam? We have to control everything about you. We beat you if you don't do what we want, and so on. And so the main overarching issue here, and then you could go ahead and translate, is that you have Muhammad, and because of certain childhood experiences, he has problems, psychological problems later in life. And instead of dealing with them and adjusting and, learning to function with a healthy psychology, He instead develops a big following and then imprints his psychological trauma and problems onto his community. So that, I mean, walk up to a Muslim, start talking. What's their biggest problem? How can you say God has a son? How can you say God the Father? How can you say Trinity? And then, you know, controlling women, and then always a problem with integrating and getting along with other groups. You have to be constantly trying to subjugate them. It's exactly what you would expect given the psychology. And so we see it in Muhammad, and then we see it imprinted on his community. And here we are 14 centuries later, and it's exactly what we see going on in the Muslim community to this day.
Awesome. So अगर हम लाइफ ऑफ मोहम्मद देखें, जो उसकी अपनी वुमेन के तहत लाइफ थी, उसमें भी देखें तो उसने अपने बेटे, जिसको उसने बेटर बनाया हुआ था, जिसका वो बाप बना हुआ था, उसने उसके साथ भी वही किया कि उसने उसकी ही बेटी के साथ, उसकी ही बीवी के साथ सॉरी लस्ट किया, और उसको अपनी बीवी बनाया तलाक दिलवा के। और फिर उसने कहा कि कोई भी किसी का एडॉप्टेड बाप बन ही नहीं सकता। फिर उसने क्या किया कि अपने सबसे सगे प्यारे दोस्त की 9 साल की बच्ची के साथ, 6 साल की बेसिकली बच्ची के साथ शादी करने का कहा। तो ये चीजें आपको दिखाती हैं किस तरीके से उसके लिए रिश्ते नाते मैटर ही नहीं करते थे, और वो हर रिश्ते नाते के ऊपर बुलडोजर फैलता जा रहा था। ठीक है, और वो इस जो बुलडोजर फैलने में उसने औरतों को 100% सबड्यू किया, और ये हमें नजर आता है, और मैंने इसके ऊपर पहली स्ट्रीम्स की हुई है, अगर आपको पता हो, सारी स्ट्रीम्स हमने देखी हुई है। और वो बुलडोजर फैलता गया तमाम रिश्तों के ऊपर, औरतों को सबड्यू करता गया, यहाँ तक कि आज अगर आप ये चीज देखते हो इस्लाम के अंदर जो उसने दीन दिया हमें, ठीक है, मोहम्मद ने, उस दीन को भी अगर देखते हैं तो वो उस दीन के अंदर भी आपको ये तमाम चीजें आज भी नजर आती हैं कि हर मुसलमान जो है वो नॉन मुस्लिम को हर वक्त सबड्यू करने के चक्कर में पड़ा रहता है, उसको नीचा दिखाने के चक्कर में पड़ा रहता है, औरतों को नीचा दिखाने के चक्कर में पड़ा रहता है। उसके लिए कोई और मजहब, कोई और धर्म, कोई और आइडियोलॉजी कभी भी एक मुनासिब चीज नहीं है, बल्कि उसने उसको नीचा दिखाना है। ठीक है, ये वो आइडियोलॉजी है जो उसने पेश की। क्यों? क्योंकि उसके पास किसी भी किस्म का रिश्ता नाता नहीं था, और उसके लिए रिश्ता नाता कोई वैल्यू ही नहीं रखता था, और वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ बादशाह बन के निकलना चाहता था। और इस्लाम जो उसने आइडियोलॉजी दी, वो उस आइडियोलॉजी के अंदर वो चीज 100% आपको नजर आती है, ब्रदर डेविड।